The night was cold, darker than any night she had ever known. Rain pounded the windows of the tall building, and thunder rumbled overhead. On the top floor, in a lavish penthouse office, Jade Carter stood with her heart thudding in her chest. Now, she faced something she had never thought possible. Standing across from her, Christian Piercy, a white millionaire CEO dressed in a crisp, dark suit, wore an expression that chilled her blood. His handsome face was set in harsh lines. The tension between them was so intense that Jade found it hard to breathe. She could see the flicker of anger and hurt in his eyes. They were locked in a silent standoff, and she had no idea how it would end. The lightning outside threw flickers of light through the glass walls, illuminating the storm raging behind him. His jaw was clenched. His tall frame was rigid, as if he fought the urge to storm away. But he didn't move. Instead, he gripped the edge of his mahogany desk. She tried to recall how this confrontation started, but her mind spun. So much had happened in so few days. She had come to work for Christian only a month ago. She needed money and a place to rest her head without fear. He was a powerful man who had given her a chance when she had nowhere to turn. But from the moment they met, he had sworn one thing: "I will never cross that line with you." Jade remembered how cold his voice had been. He had looked her in the eye and laid down that unbreakable vow. He would never touch her. She had never asked why he felt so strongly. She only knew that, no matter how many times she heard him say it, every cell in her body ached at those words. Now he was breaking every promise he had made. She could see it in his gaze. Something in him had shattered, and he seemed ready to do whatever he had sworn he wouldn't. Her pulse pounded. She didn't know if she should run or if she should stay. The door to the office was locked. The windows rattled from the wind outside. He stepped closer, and the air changed. She remembered all the silent moments when his eyes had lingered on her. Each time, he had forced himself to look away. Tonight, he was no longer holding himself back. He was standing in front of her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his breath. His scent surrounded her, mixing with the faint aroma of fine leather and expensive cologne. At that moment, with thunder shaking the building and rain lashing the windows, Jade felt a stab of fear and need all at once. She asked herself if this was the moment that would break them both. She had come here to confront him about something that would change their lives forever. She had never thought he would shut the door and twist the lock. He reached out, fingers trembling slightly. Jade's heart kicked into overdrive, and she wondered, how had it come to this? How had she ended up alone with a man who had sworn he would never even hold her hand? How had they plunged into this storm of emotions that made them both so raw, so desperate? Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, louder than the storm outside. She closed her eyes, and the next thing she knew, his lips brushed over hers. A quake of lightning illuminated the office, revealing his conflicted expression. She tasted the salt of her tears and heard the low groan in his throat, as if he was fighting a battle with himself. His vow was broken in an instant, and there was no going back. Jade realized this single moment would set the stage for everything that came next. And although it was dangerous, she couldn't bring herself to pull away. She was falling into a life-altering night, uncertain if either of them would come out the same. Before Jade ever walked into Christian's office that fateful night, she led a life of constant challenges. She had grown up in a run-down neighborhood. She had worked 2 part-time jobs to pay her bills and kept a small room in a cheap boarding house where the walls were thin and the heat went out in the winter. Jade was proud, though. She didn't let her background define her. She had an unshakable determination to rise above her circumstances. People who saw her tall, lean figure and smooth brown skin often complimented her on her poise. She had large eyes that sparkled with quiet strength. Her hair was braided neatly, a reflection of her desire to keep things orderly despite her chaotic surroundings. She wore simple clothes that fit her shape well, never too flashy, but always neat. Her dream was to find a stable job, save money, and move out of that cramped room. She wanted to support her younger sister, Lucy, who still lived back home with their mother. Jade had promised Lucy that one day she would come and get her so they could both live a better life. But Jade's heart was heavy with worry. The bills mounted, and her landlord threatened to evict her if she missed another rent payment. Each day, she woke up afraid that she would lose what little she had. Nightmares of her past kept her up at night. She longed for peace, and sometimes she wondered if she would ever find it. She went from one interview to another, always hearing the same polite rejection, "We'll keep your resume on file." Finally, an agency told her about a position as a personal assistant at a major corporation. She didn't know many details, only that the pay was good, and the boss was known to be very demanding. She jumped at the chance, hoping this could be the break she needed. When Jade arrived at Pierce Global Holdings, she was overwhelmed by the luxury. The lobby had floors of polished marble, and the walls showcased modern art. She felt out of place with her simple navy blue suit, but she reminded herself that she had every right to be there. An older woman at the front desk guided her to a private elevator. As she rode it up to the top floor, Jade's pulse quickened. She clutched her handbag as she watched the digital numbers climb. Finally, the doors slid open with a quiet ping, and she stepped onto the executive floor. She was met by an assistant named Vivian, a poised woman with kind eyes. Vivian ushered Jade into a spacious waiting area, then left to alert Mr. Pierce that his visitor had arrived. Jade waited, knees trembling. She tried to steady her breathing and went over her practiced lines in her head. When the door to the CEO's office opened, Jade was stunned by the sight of the man who walked out. Christian Pierce was tall, maybe a head taller than Jade. He had broad shoulders that filled out his tailored gray suit. His hair was short and light brown, with a few locks that fell artfully across his forehead. His face was all angles and lines, with eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She didn't know what to expect from him, but she could sense a heavy air of seriousness about him. He looked at her with a guarded expression that showed no emotion. She wondered if he had already judged her before she even spoke. Christian gestured for her to follow him into his office. Jade did so, trying to keep her shoulders back. Inside the spacious room, a glass wall offered a view of the city skyline. The desk was made of dark wood, and the furniture was sleek. The place felt cold, lacking personal touches aside from a single photo frame on the corner of the desk that was turned face down. "Sit," he said in a clipped tone, motioning to a chair. She perched on the seat, clasping her hands in her lap, determined not to let her nerves show. He studied her resume, flipping through pages without looking up. Finally, he closed the folder and fixed his steely gaze on her. "Why do you want this job?" he asked. His voice was calm yet commanding, and Jade felt as if he could see into her soul. She answered honestly, talking about her background, her need for stability, and her willingness to work hard. She tried to keep her tone steady, even though her heart pounded. She didn't mention her desperate situation, or how close she was to losing her apartment. She wanted him to see her determination, not her desperation. Christian nodded once. "I expect perfection," he said bluntly. "My schedule is busy, and I need an assistant who is sharp, reliable, and able to handle pressure. This position is not for the faint of heart." Jade swallowed and nodded. "I'm ready," she said quietly. He paused, studying her face. Then, to her surprise, he stood and extended his hand for a handshake. "You'll start tomorrow," he said. "Report to Vivian at 8. She'll show you around." A rush of relief swept through Jade. She stood and shook his hand. "Thank you, Mr. Pierce. I won't let you down." He didn't smile. "We'll see," he replied. And that was it. The interview was over. The next day, Jade arrived at 8 sharp, wearing a crisp white blouse and a black pencil skirt. Vivian greeted her with a warm smile and introduced her to several co-workers. Jade noticed that people spoke in hushed tones when they mentioned Mr. Pierce. She realized that, while he might be respected, he was also feared. Vivian handed Jade a sleek tablet and a smartphone. Both devices contained Christian's schedule, contacts, and emails. Jade was instructed to keep track of every detail: meetings, calls, travel plans, and even Christian's meal times. "He hates to be kept waiting," Vivian warned gently. "He'll expect you to handle everything quickly." Jade took a deep breath. She had never done anything on this scale, but she was determined to learn. She immersed herself in the schedule, color-coding it, setting alarms, and making notes. She wanted to prove herself worthy of the faith Christian had shown by hiring her without hesitation. Her first few days were a whirlwind. She was called into Christian's office at random times to deliver documents or get coffee. She had to arrange flights for his business trips, handle catering for his meetings, and manage dozens of messages that arrived every hour. He rarely looked at her, only giving her instructions in his steady, cold voice. Sometimes she caught a glimpse of fatigue in his eyes, but he never let his guard down. One day, Jade brought him coffee and saw him rub his temples as if he had a headache. She dared to ask, "Are you okay, Mr. Pierce?" He looked up in surprise, as though startled by her genuine concern. Then, his expression turned distant again. "I'm fine. That'll be all, Miss Carter." She left the room, feeling a sting in her chest that she tried to ignore. She told herself it was just a job, and she shouldn't grow attached to her boss or feel sorry for his troubles. Still, she couldn't help being curious about why he seemed so closed off. A week later, Jade was typing up some notes when her phone buzzed with a message from Christian. "Bring the Skybridge files to my office. Urgent." As she entered, she realized Christian was on a video call, frustration etched into his features. He waved her over and muted the call. "Hand me the contracts," he whispered. She did, and he flipped through them, scanning page after page with swift efficiency. Then he unmuted the call and fired off a string of questions to the people on the screen, referencing the documents. Jade stood there, holding her breath. She didn't dare move until he was done. Finally, he ended the call with a curt nod. The tension in his posture remained. Jade wondered if she should excuse herself, but her legs refused to move. She could sense something more in him, that daysome pain beneath his distant exterior. He closed the file, looking worn out. His eyes drifted to Jade. He studied her for a moment. She felt exposed under his gaze, as if he was seeing everything she tried to hide. But then he cleared his throat, returning to his usual stern demeanor. "Thank you, Miss Carter," he said stiffly. "I appreciate your quick response." She nodded, heart pounding. "Of course, Mr. Pierce, that's my job." For a split second, she thought she saw a flicker of warmth in his eyes, but it vanished, replaced by that cool, guarded look. "I won't keep you," he said, turning away to face his computer screen. Jade left the office, confused by the sudden exchange. For the first time, she had seen a hint of something human in Christian Pierce's eyes, and she couldn't help feeling drawn to it. One afternoon, Jade was in the break room, refilling her water bottle, when she overheard 2 coworkers chatting. They spoke in low tones, but Jade couldn't help catching pieces of the conversation. "Yeah, apparently he won't date anyone," said one. "He made some kind of vow after what happened with his ex." "Right," said the other. "I heard that's why he's so distant. He swore never to let anyone close again." Jade froze. Curiosity sparked. She tried not to eavesdrop, but her ears perked up at the mention of Christian. She wondered what had happened in his past. It might explain why he kept everyone at arm's length. She remembered the day she was hired, how abrupt he had been. It was obvious he had no patience for personal connections. He had even told her, more than once, in a polite but firm way, that their relationship would remain strictly professional. He had not used the word vow, but it was clear he had set up a wall around himself. Jade finished filling her bottle and quietly slipped out of the room. She reminded herself that she had no business delving into his personal life. She had been hired to assist him, not to solve his mysteries. Still, she couldn't deny the spark of curiosity burning in her heart. Later that day, as Jade walked back to her desk, Vivian approached her with a serious look. "Can we talk?" she asked. Jade nodded. Worried she might have done something wrong, Vivian guided her into a quiet corner. "I've noticed you're doing a great job," she began, "but I need to warn you about something." Jade's stomach twisted into knots. "What is it?" Vivian lowered her voice. "Don't get too close to Mr. Pierce. He has strict rules about personal boundaries with his assistants. You might have heard rumors about his past. It's not my place to tell you everything, but I'll just say, he's been hurt before, and it made him put up walls. If you overstep, you'll end up hurting yourself or losing your job." Jade felt her cheeks warm. "I have no intention of overstepping, Vivian. I just want to do my job well." Vivian sighed. "I believe you. But Mr. Pierce, he can be a tough man to please. You're new, so maybe you can handle it. Just keep it professional, okay?" Jade nodded. Understood. She walked away feeling both relieved and uneasy. She had no plan to complicate things, but something about the warning shook her. Why did her heart twist at the idea that Christian's past had hurt him so deeply? Why did she care? It was a quiet evening in the office when Jade discovered the extent of Christian's vow. Most employees had gone home, but she was busy finalizing details for a conference in London. Christian was still in his office, working late as usual. Suddenly, he stepped out, carrying a folder. "Miss Carter, I need you to contact the London venue and make sure the conference hall is set for next Tuesday. I also want a final head count from the guest list." "Right away," Jade replied, standing up with her tablet in hand. He hesitated, as if he wanted to say more. Then he cleared his throat. "Have you eaten?" he asked, almost awkwardly. Jade paused, surprised by the question. "Not yet," she admitted. "I was going to order something soon." He gave a curt nod. "It's late. Take a break and do that. But before you go, come into my office. I need to show you something about the schedule." They walked in, and Jade noticed that the blinds were drawn, giving the room a dim, cozy feel. He flicked on a lamp and handed her a thick binder. "Look at page 35, he instructed. She laid the binder on the desk and flipped through until she reached the correct page. It outlined some complicated details of the company's expansion plans. "Study these figures," he said, his voice tight. "We need to update the presentation slides tomorrow." As she examined the numbers, he stood behind her, his presence making her heart beat faster. She inhaled slowly, trying to focus. Suddenly, Christian spoke again, quieter. "I know there are rumors flying around the office. They're about my private life." Jade froze. She didn't know how to respond. He continued, "I don't mix personal matters with work. I have my reasons. I've made a vow to myself. I won't repeat the mistakes of the past. So I expect my employees, especially my assistant, to respect that line." Jade turned to face him. She saw the tension in his eyes. "I understand," she said gently. "I respect your boundaries, Mr. Pierce." He exhaled, as though relieved. "Thank you," he said in a whisper, and for a second his stern gaze softened. Then he straightened, stepping away. "That's all. You can go order your dinner." Jade nodded and left the office, her mind spinning with questions. A vow to never mix personal matters with work. What had happened to make him so guarded? She felt torn between sympathy and an urge to keep her distance. But despite her best intentions, her heart was already more involved than she cared to admit. Days turned to weeks. Jade continued to prove herself. She organized Christian's schedule with flawless precision, handled clients, and tackled problems that sprang up. She discovered a talent for remaining calm in tense situations, which served her well under Christian's demanding leadership. Over time, she noticed small things about him. He was more than just a demanding boss. He had a keen eye for detail, even in non-business matters. Once, during a meeting, a junior executive stuttered while presenting a pitch. Christian gracefully stepped in to guide the presentation without humiliating the man. Jade saw a hint of kindness there, hidden behind his firm exterior. Another time, she realized he often stayed in the office until after midnight. He rarely seemed to leave. One Friday, when she prepared to go home, she saw the light in his office still burning. A pang of concern hit her. Was work his only escape from whatever haunted him? Though he never admitted weakness, Jade sensed that something deep inside him was lonely. She often recalled the vow he mentioned. He acted as if letting anyone close was too big a risk. Yet she also noticed how his eyes sometimes lingered on her face, how his tone softened when he addressed her. Those moments made her pulse race, and she had to remind herself to keep things professional. One day, Christian seemed more tense than usual. Jade learned that a rival businessman, Gregory Barnes, was trying to undermine Pierce Global Holdings. He was spreading rumors about Christian's company and stealing potential deals. Christian's frustration showed during meetings, where he would press his lips together or tap his pen on the table. Jade sat close by, taking notes, feeling the tension like a coiled spring ready to snap. When they finally had a moment alone, Jade offered a suggestion. "I could set up a meeting with the board to address these rumors directly," she said quietly. "We could present our real financials and show everyone that Barnes's stories are false." Christian looked at her with a flicker of surprise. "That's a good idea," he admitted. "I'll handle the board meeting. You coordinate with the finance team to prepare the best possible data." Jade smiled. "On it." He turned back to his computer, but not before Jade caught a glimpse of gratitude in his eyes. Maybe he wasn't used to people stepping up to help him. Still, she had no idea how far Gregory Barnes would go to sabotage Christian's company or Christian himself. It was nearly 10 p.m. when Jade heard Christian's voice on the phone in his office. She had stayed late to finalize a report. Curiosity got the best of her, and she listened at a distance through the partly open door. "Barnes, you're crossing a line," Christian growled into the phone. "You won't win this fight. Leave my company alone." His tone was cold, but Jade could tell he was angry. "I won't let you destroy everything I've built." There was a pause, presumably while Barnes responded. Jade heard Christian exhale, then deliver a final low threat. "Try anything else, and I'll see you in court." With that, he hung up. Jade knocked softly. "Mr. Pierce?" He looked up, his eyes burning with frustration. "What is it?" She stepped inside, holding a folder. "The reports you wanted are ready." He took them, flipping through the pages without speaking. A heavy silence fell. Jade tried to think of a way to lighten the mood. Finally, she mustered the courage to say, "I'm sorry you have to deal with all this conflict. It seems unfair." Christian let out a bitter chuckle. "Unfair is a mild word for it. Barnes and I have a history, and he knows exactly how to strike." Jade waited, uncertain if she should ask more. But Christian stayed silent, flipping pages. Then he snapped the folder shut. "Go home, Miss Carter. It's late. You've done enough for today." She opened her mouth to protest, but he gave her a sharp look that said the conversation was over. So she nodded, gathered her things, and walked out with a strange heaviness in her chest. She told herself it was just concern for her boss's problems, but a part of her knew it was something more. A big charity gala approached, organized by Pierce Global Holdings to raise funds for underprivileged children. All major staff members were required to attend, including Jade. She wasn't used to dressing up, but Vivian insisted she look her best. "Don't forget," Vivian teased gently, "you'll be representing the company and you'll be on Mr. Pierce's arm, so to speak, as his assistant." Jade tried not to read too much into that. Still, she felt a flutter in her stomach at the idea of standing next to Christian in a formal setting. She bought a simple but elegant black gown, which highlighted her smooth, dark skin. She styled her hair in a neat bun with a few delicate strands framing her face. When the night of the gala arrived, Jade entered the grand ballroom, which glittered with chandeliers and decorative lights. Waiters carried trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Donors, entrepreneurs, and officials mingled in expensive suits and gowns. A live band played soft music. She scanned the crowd until she found Christian. He wore a classic black tuxedo, looking every bit the powerful CEO. His hair was combed back, and his posture was tall and confident. He turned when he sensed her presence. For a moment, he stared at her with an intensity that sent a shiver through her. His gaze swept from her face down to her heels. She felt her cheeks grow warm, but she maintained her composure. "Miss Carter," he said, voice low and almost friendly. "Good evening, Mr. Pierce," she replied, offering a polite nod. He stepped closer, and she caught the faint scent of his cologne. "I appreciate you being here tonight. The children's shelter we support is counting on these donations." "Of course," Jade said softly. She thought of her own childhood, and how different her life might have been if she had had more support. Suddenly, this event felt personal. They spent the evening greeting guests, discussing philanthropy, and making sure everything ran smoothly. Jade couldn't help noticing how many women eyed Christian with open admiration. She felt a strange pang each time she saw someone walk up and try to flirt with him, but Christian remained polite and distant, never giving any sign of interest. Halfway through the night, Jade was leaning against a tall table, sipping water. She needed a break from the constant chatter. That was when Christian found her. He set down a glass of sparkling water and nodded at her. "You're doing well," he said, his tone warmer than usual. "Thank you," she replied, trying not to show how much she savored his praise. He glanced around to make sure no one was within earshot. Then he said quietly, "I appreciate your help with everything lately. You've been invaluable." Her heart fluttered. "I'm just doing my job," she said, looking at her drink. He reached out as if to touch her arm but stopped himself. That single, hesitant movement said so much. She remembered the vow. She forced a smile. "We should probably greet more donors," she suggested. He nodded, stepping back. "Right. Let's go." Later in the evening, there was a tradition for the host to take part in an opening dance. Christian usually avoided such displays, but the crowd expected it. When the music started, people looked at him and waited. Vivian nudged Jade. "He might ask you," she whispered excitedly. "He doesn't have a date, and he won't dance with a stranger." Jade's heart pounded. She tried to look calm, but her mind spun. Why would he ask her, his assistant? Yet, moments later, Christian's eyes met hers. With a determined step, he walked over to her. "Miss Carter," he said, extending a hand, "would you do me the honor?" She swallowed hard. She thought of the vow, of his distant nature, of how he avoided personal contact. But the entire crowd waited, cameras ready. She nodded slowly, placing her hand in his. "Yes, Mr. Pierce," she said softly. They stepped onto the dance floor, and the band played a slow, gentle tune. Christian's hand rested lightly on her waist, while her hand gripped his shoulder. At first, they moved stiffly, unused to such closeness. But soon, they found a rhythm. She looked up, meeting his gaze. His eyes were clouded with emotion she couldn't name. They glided across the floor, and for a moment, it felt as though they were the only two people in the room. She realized his vow was on the edge of shattering. She wondered if he felt the same rush of conflicting emotions. By the time the song ended, Jade's cheeks burned, and Christian's breathing was uneven. Jade noticed how his hand lingered on her waist a second longer than it should have. The vow was cracking. She could feel it in her bones. In the days following the gala, something shifted between them. Christian's eyes lingered on Jade whenever she walked into a room. There was an unspoken awareness that drew them close, yet he fought it at every turn. One afternoon, after a long meeting, they stood alone in the conference room. Christian leaned against the table, arms crossed, while Jade gathered some stray documents. The tension simmered in the air. He cleared his throat, eyes flicking to her. "Miss Carter, about the other night. I appreciate you stepping in for that dance. It helped preserve the company's image." She gave a small smile. "I was glad to do it." His mouth parted, as if he wanted to say more, but then he snapped it shut. "Thank you," he repeated, voice quiet. Then he was gone. Moments later, Vivian walked in, noticing Jade's reddened cheeks. She said nothing, but the concern in her eyes spoke volumes. Jade realized she needed to be careful. She was treading on dangerous ground. A few days later, Jade found herself alone in Christian's office once more. It was late in the evening, and they were finalizing details for a critical investor pitch the next morning. The glow of the city lights shone through the windows, illuminating the otherwise dark room. Christian was at his desk, typing quickly. Jade stood at a table nearby, organizing the presentation materials. At one point, they both reached for the same folder. Their fingers brushed. It was a small, innocent contact, but it felt like an electric shock. Christian pulled back as though burned. He pressed his lips together, tension radiating through his body. She saw turmoil in his eyes. She offered him a polite, apologetic smile, but he looked away, cheeks flushed. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken words. Jade's heart thundered. Finally, she slipped the folder into her stack and stepped back. She waited for Christian to say something, but he only cleared his throat and returned to his computer. That night, when Jade went home, she found she couldn't stop thinking about him. She tried to remind herself he was her boss and that he had a vow. But the memory of that tiny touch replayed in her mind, stirring feelings Christian's breaking point didn't want to admit. A few days later, Jade worked late again, alone on the executive floor. She was startled when the elevator doors opened and Christian stepped out. He hadn't told her he was coming back. She had assumed he'd gone home. He walked straight to his office without a word. Concerned, Jade followed him. She found him standing by the window, looking out at the city. The lights of the skyscrapers glittered, but his eyes were filled with worry. "Mr. Pierce?" she said gently. "Is everything all right?" He turned. In the dim light, she saw the exhaustion on his face, the lines etched around his eyes. For a moment, his guard slipped. He almost looked vulnerable. "Everything is far from all right," he admitted. "Barnes is pushing a lawsuit against me, and the investors are spooked. The board wants me to step aside if the accusations get worse." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration radiating from him. Jade stepped closer. "We'll fight it," she said with quiet determination. "I'll help gather every piece of evidence to prove you did nothing wrong. We can show the board you're the strongest leader for this company." He exhaled, shaking his head. "Why are you so determined to help me?" he asked, voice heavy. "I'm just your boss. You could walk away and find something easier." Her heart pounded. She didn't have an easy answer. Yes, he was her boss, but she cared. He had given her a chance when no one else would. He had shown flashes of kindness beneath that hardened surface. She took a step forward, meeting his gaze. "I believe in you," she said simply. Emotion flickered across his face, but he clenched his jaw. "You shouldn't," he whispered. "I made a promise to myself to never—" He stopped himself. Jade watched the conflict in his eyes. She knew what he meant. He had vowed never to let himself feel for someone, never to let anyone in. But here they were, alone, with raw feelings churning. Without thinking, Jade reached out, placing a hand on his arm. He flinched slightly, but he didn't pull away. The heat of his skin against her palm sent her heart racing. She could sense that he was fighting an internal war. At last he closed his eyes and turned his face away, as if blocking out the temptation. "Jade," he said, voice low and strained, "please don't." Reluctantly, she withdrew her hand. She felt a sting of rejection, but she also understood. The vow had him in chains, and he wasn't ready to break them. The tension was almost painful as they stood there, neither knowing what to say. Finally, Jade gathered her courage and whispered, "I'm here if you need me." He nodded once, not trusting himself to speak. Then he stepped away, returning to his desk. The conversation was over, but the impact of that moment lingered in Jade's heart. Weeks passed, and the lawsuit from Gregory Barnes loomed large. Christian and Jade worked tirelessly, often staying late to gather documents, review legal briefs, and prepare statements. Their interactions were efficient and to the point, as if they were both determined to ignore the growing tension between them. But one night, Jade found herself in the office library, searching for older records that might help refute Barnes's false claims. The space was dimly lit, lined with shelves of thick binders. As Jade flipped through dusty files, she came across a stack of newspaper clippings. Her eyes widened as she read the headlines. "Heir to Pierce Holdings suffers betrayal by fiancé. Christian Pierce sells shares after cheating scandal. Billionaire love triangle exposed." She scanned the articles, horrified. Apparently, years ago, Christian's ex-fiancée had cheated on him with Gregory Barnes, who was then a close friend. This betrayal became a media sensation, embarrassing Christian and damaging his trust. Christian had vowed never to let himself be that vulnerable again. Now Jade understood the vow in full. She clutched the clippings, her heart heavy with sympathy. The pain he had endured was staggering. Personal betrayal mixed with public humiliation. He must have built that wall around himself to avoid ever being hurt like that again. She realized she was intruding on his privacy, so she put the clippings back. But she couldn't shake the ache in her chest. No wonder he swore never to touch or trust anyone. Yet she longed to show him that not everyone would betray him. Jade was returning the files to Christian's office when she found him standing by the door, arms folded. He startled her so much she nearly dropped the binders. "I see you found my old nightmares," he said, voice quiet and resigned. He pointed to the clippings poking out from one folder. She hesitated, unsure how to respond. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I was looking for records, and I stumbled on them." He nodded, stepping aside to let her pass. She placed the binders on his desk. He stood behind her, and she felt his gaze on her back. "That's why I won't let anyone in." She turned slowly to face him. Her eyes brimmed with empathy. "What she did was horrible," Jade said gently, "but not everyone is like that." Christian's jaw tensed. "How can I be sure? I thought she loved me. Then I found her in bed with my best friend, just days before our wedding." Jade's heart twisted at the thought. She moved closer, ignoring the voice in her head warning her to keep away. "Trust takes time," she said. "You don't have to shut the entire world out because of one betrayal." He looked pained, as though her words were both a balm and a fresh wound. "I made a promise to myself that I would never let my emotions control me again," he said softly. "Not after how she tore me apart." Jade swallowed hard. She felt his anguish, and she wanted so badly to comfort him. But she also knew that pushing too hard could drive him away. "You're strong, Christian," she whispered. It was the first time she used his first name, but sometimes strength means learning to open up again. For a moment it seemed he might reach for her. His hands lifted slightly, then clenched at his sides. Finally he shook his head, stepping back. "Please, Jade," he said, voice raw. "I can't do this. Just go home." She nodded, tears threatening to spill. She gathered her things and left, her mind awash with thoughts of his pain, his vow, and the fragile connection growing between them. In the following days, Jade sensed that Christian was on edge. The lawsuit drew closer, and Barnes's accusations were stirring up the board members. The pressure became unbearable. Christian snapped at employees who made minor mistakes. He locked himself in his office for hours, refusing to see anyone. One morning, Jade brought him coffee, only for him to glare and say, "Take it away, I don't need it." Then he slammed the door in her face. Though hurt, Jade refused to give up. She worked even harder, coordinating with the legal team, gathering proof of Christian's innocence, and prepping him for the board meeting where he'd have to defend himself. Outside the corporate battles, Jade wrestled with her feelings. She understood why Christian remained distant, but every time their eyes met, she saw sparks of longing he couldn't hide. She too felt them. Yet his vow stood like a steel barrier between them. One evening, Jade and Christian were in a heated debate about the best approach for the upcoming board meeting. Voices rose until Christian finally exclaimed, "Why do you even care so much?" Jade stared, her pulse hammering. "Because you're not the cold man you pretend to be," she shot back. "Because I believe in you. And because—" She trailed off, biting her lip to hold back words that might change everything. Christian's eyes flared with anger, frustration, and something deeper. For a heartbeat, it looked like he might pull her into his arms. Instead, he pinched the bridge of his nose, struggling for control. "Go home," he ordered again. "We'll handle this tomorrow." Jade turned on her heel and left. She wished she didn't care so much, but her heart refused to listen. The day of the board meeting arrived. Tension buzzed through the office like static electricity. Jade stood at the head of the conference table, distributing packets of evidence and documentation that she and Christian had compiled. Christian walked in, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit. His face was cold, determined. The board members filed in, each bearing various expressions, some sympathetic, others suspicious. They took their seats, and the meeting began. Barnes had launched several accusations, claiming that Christian used unethical methods to secure contracts. He offered no solid proof, just rumors. Still, rumors could be enough to scare investors. Christian spoke calmly, refuting each accusation with data, contracts, and testimony from employees. Jade handed him the documents at key intervals, supporting his defense. She saw pride in his eyes each time she stepped forward with the exact piece of paper he needed. Her thorough organization paid off. By the end of the 2-hour session, the board members exchanged glances. The chairman cleared his throat. "Christian, it appears you have solid evidence in your favor. We see no reason to believe Barnes's accusations. However, to protect the company's reputation, we ask that you remain cautious. Keep us informed of any developments." With that, the meeting ended. Christian let out a slow breath. He turned to Jade, and for once, there was a small, genuine smile on his lips. "Well done, Miss Carter," he said in a low voice only she could hear. She smiled back, relief washing over her. That evening, Christian insisted on taking the entire executive team to dinner at an upscale restaurant to celebrate. Jade joined them, though she felt out of place among the high-powered executives. However, after all their hard work, she allowed herself to enjoy the moment. She sipped sparkling water and listened to the lively conversation around the table. Christian was in a better mood than she had ever seen him. He even made a few dry jokes that made people laugh. During dinner he made a toast. "To the best team I could hope for," he said, raising his glass of champagne. His gaze lingered on Jade. She felt her cheeks warm, but she returned his steady look. A flutter of hope danced in her chest. As the meal ended, some colleagues departed. Christian turned to Jade, still seated beside him. "We should talk about tomorrow's tasks. Let's go back to the office if you don't mind." Jade felt a pang of confusion. Was it just about work, or something more? She nodded, though her heart pounded. Of course. They took a sleek black car back to the office tower. The driver dropped them off at the lobby, and they rode the private elevator together. The silence between them crackled with tension. Christian stared at the elevator doors, and Jade studied his reflection in the mirrored walls. Her thoughts raced. Was she ready for whatever might happen tonight? She recalled Vivian's warning about not crossing lines, but Jade couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him. When the doors opened on the top floor, Jade followed him into his office. The space was silent, lit only by the city lights through the window. The staff had gone home. They were alone. Christian walked to his desk, leaning against it. Jade set her purse down, trying to steady her breathing. She waited for him to speak. After a long silence, he finally said, "I want to thank you." She blinked. "You already did, at dinner." He shook his head. "Not just for that. For everything. For believing in me when others doubted me. For working so hard to protect me and this company. For caring enough to stay by my side." Jade's heart pounded. She took a hesitant step forward. He watched her with guarded eyes. "You've done so much for me, too," she whispered. "You gave me a chance when nobody else would." He let out a shaky breath. "Jade, I." Thunder rumbled outside. Even though the sky had been clear earlier, a storm had rolled in unexpectedly, lightning flashing through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The tension in the room was thick, mirroring the storm beyond the glass. Christian took a step toward Jade. She held her ground, not daring to move. His voice was barely a whisper when he spoke. "I swore I'd never do this again. I told myself I wouldn't touch you, but you've shattered every reason I had to keep my distance." She felt goosebumps rise on her arms. Lightning illuminated the office, and in that sudden flare of light, she saw his face, a storm of desire and fear warring inside him. Then he took another step, closing the gap between them. With trembling hands, he reached out, gently cupping her cheek. Jade's breath caught in her throat. She placed her hand over his, her warmth surrounding his trembling fingers. She could hardly believe this was happening. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. But she didn't. She rose on her toes, meeting him halfway. Their lips brushed in a tentative kiss that sent a jolt through Jade's entire being. Christian inhaled sharply, as if tasting both heartbreak and hope in that single moment. Lightning flashed again, revealing the raw emotion in his eyes. He let out a low groan and wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. She melted against him, returning the kiss with a softness that brought tears to her eyes. It was as if the entire world had fallen away, leaving only the two of them. He whispered against her lips, "I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm risking." Jade silenced him with another kiss, a bit firmer this time. She didn't have the words to express everything she felt. She only knew that in this moment, she wanted to show him he deserved to be cared for, that he didn't have to face life alone. When they finally broke apart, breathing heavily, Christian pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm scared," he admitted, voice raw. "I'm terrified of losing again." She raised a hand to his cheek, wiping away a tear that escaped his eye. "I'm scared too. But sometimes we have to take risks for what we want." He nodded, closing his eyes. Then he kissed her again, more passionately this time, as though he had set his vow aside for good. Rain pelted the windows, thunder echoing in the vast night. But inside that office they discovered a moment of solace. When Jade woke the next morning, she was on the sofa in Christian's office, wrapped in a soft blanket. They had shared a night of quiet conversation. Though they hadn't gone beyond kisses and embraces, Jade felt her world shift. She sat up, realizing Christian was gone. Her heart raced. Had he regretted everything? But then the door opened, and he entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He paused when he saw she was awake, a small, unsure smile tugging at his lips. "Good morning," he said. She returned his smile shyly. "Morning." He handed her the coffee, then sank onto the sofa beside her. They sat in silence for a moment, both feeling the weight of the night before. Finally, he spoke. "I meant what I said. I'm afraid, Jade, but for once, I'm more afraid of losing what we have than of holding on to my vow." Her eyes misted. She placed her hand over his. "I'm scared too, but maybe we can face those fears together." He exhaled in relief, nodding. They sipped their coffees, exchanging gentle smiles, hearts beating with cautious hope. Word spread quickly that Jade spent the night in the office with Christian. Though nothing scandalous had happened, at least not to the extent people assumed, office gossip flew. Some whispered that Jade was sleeping her way to the top. Others said Christian had finally broken his vow. Jade felt uneasy whenever she caught her co-workers' sideways glances. She didn't want to stir up drama or risk losing her job. Meanwhile, Christian's protective streak emerged. He quietly warned the biggest gossips to keep their rumors to themselves. However, a tension brewed in the workplace. Vivian approached Jade in private. "You know how people talk," she said gently. "I don't believe the rumors myself, but I want you to be careful. This could cause complications." Jade nodded, her heart heavy. "I know." Vivian gave her a reassuring squeeze on the arm. "Just be cautious. Mr. Pierce obviously cares about you." Jade appreciated the concern, but she also felt a stab of guilt. She and Christian had crossed lines they swore they wouldn't. Yet, she couldn't regret it. Not when she remembered the tenderness in his eyes. Just when Christian thought he had neutralized Barnes's threats, a new blow landed. Barnes gave an exclusive interview to a sensationalist newspaper, slandering Christian's character and hinting that Christian's personal life was full of inappropriate relationships. He even implied that Jade's swift promotion was due to favoritism. Christian fumed when he read the article. He summoned Jade to his office. "He's trying to paint you as some pawn in a twisted game," he said, eyes blazing. "I won't let him ruin your reputation." Jade felt her stomach twist. It hurt to see someone hurl lies at her. She had worked hard to earn her position. Now, people were questioning her integrity. "What do we do?" she asked softly. Christian grimaced. "We fight back. I'll sue him for defamation." She nodded, placing a hand over her racing heart. "I'm sorry this is happening," she whispered. He shook his head, stepping closer, cupping her face in his hands. "It's not your fault. It's mine for letting Barnes get under my skin. I won't let him hurt you." He kissed her forehead gently, and she closed her eyes. In that moment, she realized how much had changed. Christian Pierce was no longer the cold, distant man she first met. He was someone who cared, who would stand by her side against any storm. Christian arranged a press conference to address Barnes's allegations. He insisted Jade join him, standing by his side as he read a prepared statement. It was a risk putting Jade in the public eye, but they agreed it was the best way to show solidarity. The day of the press conference, Jade wore a modest yet professional outfit. A tailored gray skirt and blazer, her hair in a simple twist. She felt nervous, knowing cameras would be pointed at her. Christian stood tall in a navy blue suit, exuding calm authority. He cleared his throat before the assembled media. "Gregory Barnes has repeatedly made false accusations against me and my company," he said, voice clear. His recent remarks about my personal life and my assistant, Miss Carter, are baseless. Miss Carter earned her position through hard work. I value her dedication, honesty, and skill. Barnes's attempt to smear her reputation will not stand. Jade felt warmth bloom in her chest at his words. The cameras flashed as reporters scrambled to ask questions. Christian answered each one calmly, refusing to be baited into anger. Finally, he concluded, "We will be pursuing legal action for defamation. I have full faith in our justice system to see the truth." When it ended, he gently guided Jade off the stage. Her legs felt shaky, but his hand at her elbow steadied her. They hurried into a private hallway, away from the journalists. Christian let out a breath, meeting her eyes. "Thank you for standing with me," he said. She shook her head, smiling. "I wouldn't have it any other way." That night, a ferocious thunderstorm broke out. Rain pelted the city, and the wind howled. Jade stayed at the office late again, helping Christian finalize the lawsuit paperwork. Around 9 p.m., the building's power flickered. Thunder boomed, and the lights dimmed. Christian frowned. "Looks like the storm is stronger than we thought," he murmured. He checked his phone. Weather reports suggest it might knock out power in some parts of the city. Jade felt a ripple of anxiety. She'd never liked storms, especially ones this intense. "Should we leave before it gets worse?" she asked. He shook his head, glancing at the dark sky outside. "The roads might be dangerous right now. Let's wait it out for a bit." They settled in the office lounge, where an emergency generator kept a few lamps lit. Christian turned on some soft music from his phone to drown out the storm's roar. They sat together on a plush couch, exhaustion etched on both their faces. Despite the raging wind and thunder, Jade felt a strange sense of peace. She leaned her head on Christian's shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her. The closeness felt natural, as though they had been doing this for years. He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I'm sorry you got dragged into my mess," he said quietly. She reached up, brushing her fingers through his hair. "I don't regret a single moment," she whispered. He closed his eyes, letting himself relax against her. The vow he once clung to was long gone now, replaced by a tender hope that they could face anything as long as they stood together. The storm showed no signs of letting up. Lightning streaked the sky, followed by deafening booms. The office windows shook, and the lamp flickered, casting shadows across Christian's face. Sensing the moment's gravity, Jade decided to speak from her heart. "Christian, I want you to know something. I care for you, deeply. This isn't just gratitude or admiration, it's more than that. And I'm not asking for anything in return. I just need you to know how I feel." He looked down at her, eyes shining with emotion. He took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "I was afraid to ever let myself feel this way again," he confessed. "But I realize I can't deny it anymore. You've shown me that not everyone is out to betray me. You've given me hope." Tears pricked Jade's eyes. "So what now?" she asked, voice trembling. "You're still my boss. There's still a lot of people who might not approve." He sighed, gently stroking the back of her hand with his thumb. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I do know I want to be with you. We'll figure out the rest." They exchanged a soft kiss as lightning lit the room, sealing a silent promise to face whatever came next. The storm continued to rage outside, but in each other's arms, they found warmth and safety. The lawsuit against Barnes moved forward quickly. Christian's legal team uncovered a paper trail proving that Barnes had spread false rumors and manipulated stock to hurt Pierce Global Holdings. It seemed the tide was turning in Christian's favor. But Barnes wasn't done. He tried to blackmail Christian by threatening to leak private photos from Christian's past. Photos of him and his ex-fiancée, and some of Jade in the office. He aimed to twist the story further, suggesting inappropriate behavior. Jade felt a chill when she learned about it. worried about how the media would spin it. Christian confronted Barnes in a meeting arranged by lawyers. "You're desperate," Christian said coldly. "Threatening to release private photos shows how low you'll go. It won't change the truth you lied, and now you're facing the consequences." Barnes sneered. "If I go down, I'll drag you and your little assistant down too." Christian's anger was evident, but he kept it in check. "Do what you want," he replied. "Our evidence against you is solid. I won't be blackmailed." After the meeting, Christian found Jade pacing in his office. She looked up, fear etched in her features. "What if he leaks those photos? What will that do to your reputation?" He wrapped her in his arms. "I don't care about my reputation. I only worry about you and how you'll be affected by all this." She pressed her face against his chest, comforted by his warmth. "I can handle it," she said softly. He lifted her chin, meeting her gaze. "You're not causing any suffering, Jade. Barnes is the one causing trouble, and I won't let him win." His words were steady, reassuring. Jade nodded, clinging to the belief that truth would triumph. Still, a flicker of fear remained. What if Barnes unleashed something they couldn't control? The big day of reckoning arrived when Barnes was set to appear in court. Christian, Jade, and the legal team presented their evidence of Barnes's lies and manipulations. Barnes tried to counter with his blackmail threats, but the judge ruled those irrelevant. The facts were clear. Barnes had falsified documents and spread harmful rumors. He was found liable for defamation and malicious business practices. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. Christian emerged hand in hand with Jade, no longer hiding their relationship. Cameras flashed, and microphones were shoved in their faces, but Christian gave a concise statement. "Justice was served today. I'm grateful for the support of my team, especially Miss Carter. We're looking forward to moving on from this chapter." Barnes slunk away, his reputation in tatters. Christian and Jade felt a wave of relief wash over them. They had withstood a storm of legal battles and personal attacks, but they came out stronger. Back at Pierce Global Holdings, the staff gathered to celebrate the victory. Vivian rushed to hug Jade, whispering, "I knew you two would work it out. Congratulations." Jade blushed, smiling at the well-wishers. Christian stood nearby, fielding questions from board members. They seemed more supportive than ever, impressed by Jade's dedication. It was clear that she and Christian had formed a genuine partnership, both in the office and in their personal lives. Later that evening, Christian led Jade to his private office. He closed the door behind them, and the tension of the day melted away. He drew her into his arms. "We did it," he murmured, brushing a soft kiss across her lips. She smiled, resting her forehead against his. "Together," she whispered. He pulled back slightly, a rare, playful light in his eyes. "I have a question for you." Reaching into his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box. Jade's heart soared as he opened it, revealing a simple, elegant ring. Her eyes brimmed with tears. "Christian," she breathed, her voice trembling with emotion. He took her hand gently, voice filled with warmth. "I once vowed I'd never open my heart again, but you changed me. I'd like to make a new vow on that I hope you'll share. Will you marry me, Jade Carter?" She let out a shaky laugh, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she wrapped her arms around his neck, bringing him close. They kissed, sealing a promise of a future they would build together, own free from the chains of past betrayal, built on trust, love, and hope. Outside the window, the city lights twinkled like stars, and the remnants of the storm had passed, leaving the sky clear. In that clear night, Jade and Christian discovered that broken vows could be replaced by stronger, truer promises. Their story didn't end in heartbreak or betrayal, but in the sweet certainty that love, no matter how frightening, was worth every risk.